Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I'm going to be doing a Q&A video today. I'm planning on getting back to doing these Q&A videos on a regular basis, hopefully weekly, not making any promises. But I get so many questions from you guys every week on email and social media, and I figured why not just try to do at least answer one question a week. So today's question comes from Instagram user at Lindsay M. Kuhn, who asked a really great question. She said, "Is meditation the single best exercise we can be doing and or to remind ourselves of I am?" And I imagine this question likely came from watching the Remember I Am series that I did back in July. And so my answer is going to be a little bit maybe unconventional. Um, when we talk about the word practice, I like to be a bit careful about the words that I choose or that I use because a practice can sort of imply a doer who does something, right? And, in one sense, we can use that term as a concession to the belief that I am this person, I am this body who does things, right? But really in non-duality or in self-realization, we're trying to unlearn that belief. So we can use the word practice loosely. When we say meditation, typically we think of somebody sitting in a lotus position, a timer on the clock, 30 minutes trying to get still, calm the mind, and enter that silence. But in the purest sense, that's not what meditation is. Meditation, in the truest sense, is simply witnessing the mind. So you can meditate anywhere that you are throughout the day. Even if you're engaging in a conversation with someone, you can be in meditation. And I would even say that true meditation happens. It's not an act or a doership, so to speak, that we do as a practice. Now, we can, of course, sit in the lotus position, listen to a guided meditation, try to remain still. But, when we really think about it, what are we actually doing when we meditate? Meditation is really more of a non-doing, isn't it? It's more about trying to do less, trying to relax more into the seat of awareness and just observe. And when we do that, certain things begin to happen to our consciousness. So I would say firstly that meditation is not a practice, but it is the result of an inner desire to know the self. Nisargadatta has a great definition of meditation that I love. He simply classified it as seeing the false, witnessing the false. That's all meditation is. And when we say false, what we mean is not that we are denying thoughts or rejecting thoughts or labeling thoughts as something that's bad. We simply mean false in the sense that it has no reality outside of me, right? If a thought arises in my mind or a feeling, and I watch it and just am not interested in it, give it no attention, the thought immediately dissolves out of my experience, right? And that's because the thought has no reality that I do not give to it. So this is sort of the, can become the problem for the spiritual seeker in meditation, is that if you sit down to meditate as a practice, you're assuming the role of the meditator, right? I'm the person who's going to meditate myself out of the person. And it can't be done, right? The mind will use anything to reinforce itself. So you can't meditate your way out of being the meditator in that sense. So rather than seeing it or labeling it as a practice we do, which we can, of course, I think it's more helpful just to see meditation as something that happens as a result of a desire being born in the heart to know myself. When I truly want to know myself and go beyond the mind, beyond my self-images and false concepts and beliefs about who I am, when I want to go beyond those things, meditation just begins to happen. I just become aware of my thoughts, my mind, the activity, the functions. And as that happens, the more that we meditate, we become less interested in what is being observed and more interested in what is doing the observing. So our thoughts and our beliefs and our memories and our stories that torment us, they just slowly start to lose their significance. The more we just watch them with a dispassionate energy, so to speak, the more we just allow them to be what they are without giving any personal interest to them, they begin to lose their energy for us. And there becomes a curiosity that's born to know who is it that is able to be aware. And that's where the magic starts to happen. So I guess to answer the question in the shortest way, I would say that for me personally, the most powerful practice, using that term loosely, is what is called self-abidance. The practice that comes before self-abidance is self-inquiry. And that's the practice that Ramana Maharshi made famous. And what comes before self-inquiry is meditation. So meditation, when done correctly, leads you to natural self-inquiry. A natural curiosity is born. Who am I that is aware? What is it that is aware of my experience? How is it that I can be aware? It just becomes fascinating to you. And it doesn't make any sense to the analytical mind why that would be so fascinating. But as you meditate, it just becomes interesting to you. Who am I? That is the observer. And that's because it's happening somewhere beyond the thinking mind, right? There's a seat of awareness that's becoming aware of itself, and the natural gravity of love that the self has begins to pull itself inward, and it begins to wake up to itself. So, each one of us is, each one of us is that infinite consciousness that has localized itself into a body, right? Into a mind and into a body. And this is for the purpose of knowing itself, because without a body or a mind, it just is infinite consciousness, right? There's no reference point. There's no contrast that it can know itself through. So it has to dream of being something finite, and through the lens of otherness or separateness, it can look at itself and go, oh, I am infinite consciousness. I am the one reality. That's the only way the one reality can know itself. And that's why each one of us is a divine being. Each one of us is God knowing itself. But meditation is what allows the one reality to wake up to itself. Because in this body, in this mind, we could say that infinite consciousness has forgotten itself or fallen asleep to itself, as we do each night when we dream. We forget the waking state, identity, and we assume the role of the dream character, right? Now, in the dream, we can't see the meaning of the dream, right? We're just experiencing it. It's the only reference we have. But upon waking, we can look back at the dream and learn about what the dream is showing us about our subconscious mind, our beliefs, our identities and whatnot. So in the same way, when infinite consciousness wakes up to itself in the physical form, we call that self-realization or enlightenment. And it's really the simplest thing in the world, right? It's the simplest thing in the universe. It's realizing I am that. I am. We've associated so many things with the I am, and they're not true. They are false, right? Meditation is to witness those things that are false. I am the mind that thinks thoughts. Okay, that's not true, right? The mind is thinking thoughts. You are observing the thoughts. There is no entity doing the thinking. There's just thoughts arising. It's just happening. Thinking just happens. If we think about this further, right? If you were the thinker, then you would be responsible for all of it. Meaning, you would have to think about what to think about, right? So your first thought would always be, what should I think about? And if that were the case, you would never choose of your own free will to suffer, right? When you weren't thinking, you would be in perfect stillness and peace. So it's not as if, let's use an example. I always use the grocery store, so let me choose something else. Let's say you're standing in line at the DMV, right? You're standing in a long line at the DMV. Now, the human experience is to suffer, right? Oh, this is taking so long. Why do I have to be here? I hate this process. This is so stupid. What a waste of time. But rather, if you were the thinker, you would be standing in line at the DMV in total peace, in your Buddha-like nature, and then you would have to think, what should I think about right now? And then the next thought would have to be, I'd like to have a suffering thought. How would I create suffering for myself right now? Well, I could think about resisting this moment. That would cause some suffering. Okay, yes, how could I resist the moment? I could say that I shouldn't be here, right? That's what it would be like if we were the thinker, if there's no one else doing it for us, right? So through meditation, we begin to recognize the absurdity of this notion that I am the thinker. I am the initiator of my thoughts. As we observe the mind, we begin to see more and more thoughts are just arising on behalf of my conditioning, right? There's nobody doing it. It's a product of the body. And this is why in a lot of non-dual traditions, they refer to the ego as the body mind. Quite literally, it is the mind that comes with this body. So once we become aware of thought, we can then look into the nature of thought, right? You can look for yourself behind the thoughts and come to see that you cannot find yourself as the thinker. All you ever find are more thoughts, right? So you know that you are not a thought because before the thought appeared in your mind, you were already there as the witness. After the thought leaves and another thought arises, you're still there, right? So you can't be your thoughts. So then the natural curiosity is born after enough meditation practice has happened. Who am I that is aware of my thoughts? And this is self-inquiry. Self-inquiry is, you could say, a more powerful practice than even meditation, because it is what meditation leads us to. So self-inquiry is what allows us to locate the sense of I am. Meditation is more of a practice of negation. It is, as they say in the Advaita or Vedanta traditions, neti neti, right? Neti neti means not this, not this. So it's seeing the false as false. I am not that thought. I am not that feeling. I am not the thinker of that thought. I am not the feeler of that feeling. But self-inquiry takes us to the I am. And Ramana Maharshi's practice of self-inquiry was a bit different than the traditional sort of Hindu practice of self-inquiry. Ramana's practice was to see the I am as the very reality from which thoughts appear. The I am is what gives reality to everything, to all thought. And this is where the I thought is born. The mind takes the I am principle, the sense I am, which is ungiven in every human being. It takes that sense I am and attaches it to a thought and says, I this, I that, and identification is born, right? So self-inquiry is to find this I thought, right? To grab onto it and just watch it diligently. And as we begin to watch the I thought, it begins to dissolve, meaning this impulse for the mind to identify with everything. I did that, I thought that, I felt that, guilty, guilty, guilty. Suddenly it starts to make less and less sense to us. And we stop associating this I am with anything else. And we just simply recognize ourselves as I am. So by constantly, consistently asking the question with real curiosity, right? It's not like a practice or a mantra you repeat, who am I, who am I, who am I? That would not produce any fruit because it's not coming from a real place of sincerity. There has to be a real desire to know the answer to the question, who am I? So we begin through meditation, watching and observing the mind, and after enough meditation, be it weeks or years or decades, we begin to wonder who is aware, on whose behalf are these thoughts arising? And as we ask that question, we recognize, these thoughts are arising on behalf of an idea of who I think I am. It's referencing my memories. Oh, this trauma happened to you, so this is your identity now. And you should think about how worthless you are, how unlovable you are, because remember in the past, you were not loved by this or that person. We start to see the mind doing these things, and the seeing of it is the healing of it. The self within us just begins to step away from these identifications and just begin to rest in I am. And this is where self-inquiry takes us to self-abidance. Self-abidance happens as a result of self-inquiry. So meditation allows us to become increasingly skeptical of our egoic identities because we start to see them as just more thoughts, right? It's not something solid and rigid. It's just an idea that I believe in or don't. The idea of I am this person, I am this nationality, I was born on this day, these are my fears, these are my desires, right? All these things are just thoughts in the mind, and they can be witnessed, they can be observed. But who is the one that observes them? That's what's more interesting. So the more that we contact that sense I am in self-inquiry, the more we begin to fall in love with it. Because what happens through this self-investigation, just asking, who am I? Who is aware? What is it that knows my experience? We become very curious about the nature of this awareness, right? We see I cannot separate myself from awareness, right? There is no I am without awareness. So awareness is the earliest thing I can find as my sense of self. So then what is the nature of that awareness? Is it evil, right? That's important to know. Is it selfish? Is it prideful? Is it arrogant? And the more that we investigate what the nature of awareness is, the more that we come to see that its very nature is immense peace, boundless love. And this is the purpose of all spiritual seeking. We all want to know and to have and to abide in that endless peace and love of our true nature. So in that way, meditation and self-inquiry are simply tools we can use to access our true nature, to unlock or discover our true nature. The analogy I like to use is that of a raft. Self-inquiry is like a raft that allows us to cross the river from the not self to the true self, from our old paradigm of who we think we are to the true reality of what we are. Self-inquiry is what takes us there. But when we arrive on the other shore, we don't need to take the raft with us any longer, right? We can leave the raft behind and enter into the peace and love of our true nature and abide there. So through meditation, we watch this process happening all the time, and we begin to see its unreality. That's the purpose of meditation, to expose the unreality of the mind. Once we see the unreality of our mind, of all of our mental identities, that, oh, actually, these are just stories I've accumulated about myself, but none of them are original to me. I wasn't born with all these stories. I was born as pure emptiness, pure infinite consciousness, pure love localized in a body, in a mind. Once it becomes clear to me that I am not the body, I am not the mind, through the practice of meditation, through just observing the mind, eventually we come to the question, well, then who am I? If I am not this body I always thought I was, if I am not this mind or the thoughts that appear in it, who am I? And this is self-inquiry. A thought appears and it is recognized. I'm not the thinker of that thought. I am the awareness of it. Then we wonder, who is it that is aware? How do I know I am aware? How is it that I am always aware? Can I separate myself from this awareness? These kinds of questions naturally lead us to the sense I am. And when we find the sense I am, we always know it because it carries with it, as the fragrance of its true nature, a sort of overwhelming inner quiet, a silence that just seems to mute the whole world around us. And the only thing that remains there is peace. We could also call it love because there is no separation in oneness. There's nothing outside of oneness. So everything awareness sees, it sees itself in it, right? So in that way, every person you meet through this practice of self-inquiry, you begin to see them as yourself. You actually forget what it's like to see somebody as not you, because you no longer believe yourself to be a body and a mind, so you don't believe other people are either, right? You project that self-perception onto everything. There is just infinite consciousness. There is just the one reality, the supreme being. And I know that I am that, which means you are that. And this is where self-abidance begins to happen, very much as the Course in Miracles teaches us. You know, the whole kind of idea the Course puts forward is that other people are the path to heaven. Because if I see myself in them, I must truly know who I am. I must have entered into fourth density consciousness, oneness, unity. And so when we recognize others to be ourselves, we could say we've entered into the phase of self-abidance, where we no longer have to look for the I am or search for I am, but we actually are seeing, tasting, experiencing I am all the time, everywhere we go, in every face that we meet. Every experience gives us the touch of our true reality. And, you know, the mind wants to negate this as nothing, right? What good could possibly come of remaining as I am? What's the point, right? But that's because the mind can't go to the I am, because the I am is earlier than the mind. The I am is prior to the mind. So the mind can't understand the sense I am. It can only make up concepts about it. So in meditation, we use the mind as a tool to unwire itself, so to speak, to decondition itself from these beliefs. But once we find that pure, unassociated I am through the mind, through the practice of meditation, just like the raft that gets us across to the other shore, we have to leave it behind. And we have to enter into I am. We have to abide there. We have to know ourselves as that. And that happens in a place beyond the mind. It's not a conceptual knowing. It's an intuitive knowing. And it is the intuitive knowing of myself as that ground of being, that I am, that allows me to see it in everything. And once I see myself in everything, as A Course in Miracles talks about, that's when I know I've reached self-abidance. I'm no longer looking for I am, searching for it, or doing a practice called self-inquiry for it. I can't not see it, you could say. It is all I know of who I am any longer. And the more that we remain and abide in that ground of being, the more like love we become, because there's nothing else to see but myself. And that is why we say the nature of awareness is peace and love, because everything it looks upon, it sees itself. So as a practice, you could say that meditation is the highest practice, because it's really the last thing the person does to work itself out of the belief that I am the person. When we achieve self-realization and we look back at the process, we realize it all just happened. There was no person who meditated itself out of being a person, right? Simply these beliefs lost their reality through that witnessing presence. Some grace was given to me to become aware of my true nature. And as awareness became increasingly aware of itself, we could say, the unreality of the mind just began to lose its weight. Like waking up from a dream in the morning, you look back at the dream, and no matter how bad the nightmare was, it loses its meaning for you. It loses its reality because you're now back in your home again. Oh, nothing actually happened to me, right? I am eternally safe. The dream never actually affected me, only in my mind. So we fall asleep to our old nature, the false self, sort of in the same way that we fall asleep at night. Through meditation and self-inquiry, we just kind of melt into the I am. It just sort of happens. And we can't look back and say, when did it happen, right? When did I fall asleep last night? At what moment did it happen? You can't find the moment it happened. Simply the waking state lost its reality and you woke up into a new reality. And self-realization is very much like that. So in that sense, I don't like to use the word practice, But in the loose relative sense, we can say that yes, meditation is the highest practice because it leads me ultimately to self-abidance, which is the natural state of I am.